The Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer is the workhorse of the U.S. Navy's surface force. They provide offensive and defensive capabilities and can operate independently or as part of a group. We can improve them. We have the technology. Hybrid electric drives, called sessions, allow destroyers to go further, stay longer, and deliver more firepower. The sessions have increased energy efficiency at speeds below 12 knots, which account for 50% of the time destroyers are underway. And the sessions can conserve fuel, so the destroyer captain has it when needed for speed or maneuvering. Soon, this will mean more fuel to power the next generation of weapon systems. Using the HED means more time on station to complete the mission, rather than being tied to a fuel source. This means more time to support combat commanders, search for enemy assets, or conduct ballistic missile defense.
Procurar ativos inimigos ou realizar defesa antimísseis balísticos.
There with the war's seat post. You saw it. It was an American Navy advertisement around 2015-2016 regarding the hybrid transmission system they would implement on the Arleigh Burke-class missile destroyers. It turned out to be another project that went wrong. They found it unfeasible, only implemented it on one ship, and left the rest high and dry, meaning they didn't install it. But we have to look at one thing. Arleigh Burke-class missile destroyers were a good solution when they were designed at the end of the Cold War, around 1988. Why? It was a destroyer with more than 8,000 tons of displacement, almost a cruiser, and with the capacity to launch 90 missiles in vertical cells, like the ones you see in our video. But something is happening now, as the fight against the Houthis has begun to reveal a very serious problem to the Americans, which is the issue of loading the launcher tubes. Let's clarify this. We'll show the illustration so you can understand it well, and I'll explain that this logistical problem can create a tactical setback for the Americans and lead to the loss of ships. In the Red Sea, it's somewhat difficult because the Russians are not in a position to carry out major attacks. But in the South China Sea, in the Baltic Sea, against the Chinese or Russians, it's certain that this will happen. The Americans already have significant concerns in this regard. Let's take a look. Well, folks, what you're seeing there is a canister being placed in the Mk-41 vertical launcher. In the past, what used to happen? The frigates had a crane on board. But then people thought, look, let's do the following. Let's remove this crane, and in the space it occupies, we can fit a few more missiles. Well, the result of all this was that today you no longer have the crane on board. You need to go to a port to reload. Then you see the ship being reloaded at the port. Then you say, but it was foolish to remove the crane. Sort of, folks. The whole problem is that even the crane had limitations due to the sea state. Under certain sea state conditions, you could no longer perform the reload because there would be too much sway. You couldn't achieve alignment between the crane and the canister, and you might end up having an accident. So it was quite risky. It makes a lot of sense, but here's what happens. On a ship like the Arleigh Burke, after firing 90 missiles, it becomes a passenger ship because you've lost its main capability, which is missile launching, the ability to defend itself and the fleet. Now we're going to start thinking a bit about other solutions. Well, we're going to take a look now at a project by BAE Systems, and what happens is that they have developed a modular missile launcher system. So you would add a reasonable amount of missiles to ships that already have some type of launcher, or even to those that wouldn't have any. This system can be adapted to various types of ships and would theoretically increase the defensive capability of the American fleet. Let's take a look at the system, which is quite ingenious.
Vamos dar uma olhada no sistema que ele é bastante engenhoso. Criou sistema muito engenhoso chamado ADL, que
He created a very ingenious system called ADL, which is Adaptable Deck Launching Systems. So what happens? How does this system effectively work? I'm going to show you this video here from BAE, and you'll be able to see the system firsthand. Because it is detachable, you can make an adaptation and don't need to place it directly on the combat ship. You can even put these containers on an auxiliary ship, so you can save space. It is quite versatile, like a Lego. Effectively, this system is very ingenious, and the United States Navy is considering placing these systems on their ships. However, as always, nothing in life is perfect, and the ADL also has its limitations.
O ADL também tem as suas limitações. Bom, o que acontece com o ADL? Primeiro que o lançamento.
Well, what happens with the ADL? First, its launch is not completely vertical. It's an inclined launch. So the missile already uses some fuel to get going in that direction, giving you a bit less flexibility. The missile then uses a bit more fuel to get on its navigation trajectory. And what happens in this scenario? The fuel you use there will reduce your range. Now, this system has an advantage because, for example, what is the main feature of the Arleigh Burke? It's the Aegis system, which can control the entire airspace, missile launches, etc.
O controle de todo esse espaço aéreo, lançamento de mísseis, etc. Você pode colocar esse
You can place this BAE system on an auxiliary ship, for example, an amphibious ship, a ship that is not effectively a combat ship, right? But you can maneuver these missiles through a data link. So this ship won't need to have an operations center to maneuver the missiles. It can be maneuvered from the flagship or even through a jet like the F-35, which has a very good data transmission capability. The American Navy thinks a lot about this. It's an interesting solution. Why are we talking about this, folks? Because the war against the Houthis has already proven that a naval force is vulnerable to a massive attack.
Ela já provou que uma força naval é vulnerável a ataque massivo. Para a sorte dos Estados Unidos, os Houthis.
Fortunately for the United States, the Houthis do not have that massive missile attack capability. Because think about this, the Arleigh Burke is defending a fleet. It has 90 missiles, but those 90 missiles are not just for it. They are for the entire fleet. And it doesn't only have anti-aircraft missiles, it needs anti-submarine missiles. It has a range of things in those launchers. So if those 90 run out, that's it. It needs to leave the area. It's a fact, as happened against the Houthis now. When you consider a situation like the South China Sea, the Chinese do not have the logistical limitations that the Houthis have. They have missiles there, and no one knows the quantity of missiles those guys have.
Ninguém sabe a quantidade de mísseis que esses caras têm. Então, fatalmente, os americanos perderiam.
So, inevitably, the Americans would lose a fine ship there. So, what do we see? That the concept of the Arleigh Burke, which was an excellent ship, I always say 8,000 tons is a lot, almost a cruiser. And for that time, today, in the face of new threats, hypersonic missiles, swarms of drones, swarms of missiles, whatever it may be, it has this vulnerability. How are the Americans going to deal with this? Well, I showed that they are trying various solutions. But the problem of the United States, in my opinion, folks, is not this. I'm going to show you two videos now so you can see a project from 60 years ago by the United States Navy, which only now they have gotten rid of. Let's take a look.
Ela mandou embora. Só agora ela se livrou. Vamos dar uma olhadinha. Esse daí é o RP Flip, né, que é uma drone de
This is the RP Flip, which is a floating instrument platform. It is a research vessel of the United States Navy that operated for over 50 years. Its main feature was standing upright in the sea, as you can see in the photo there. Look, the American Navy must have had its reasons, right? They must have discovered something with this ship. But the whole problem with these projects is that they are very eccentric, very bizarre. You invest a lot of money in it, and then the results you get are debatable. So the US Navy as a whole, we saw the problem there with electrical transmission. The case of the F-35 itself, I mean, it's a lot of misused money, and then there's a lack of funds for really important things, like missile reloading.
importantes, né? Como o recarregamento de mísseis. Então vocês viram aí onde vai o dinheiro do contribuinte americano?
Did you see where the American taxpayers' money is going? It's this project, projects like the F-35 in the United States, which is another nonsense. I think the following. If they thought about practical solutions, viable solutions, like fleet defense, because it's at risk now, no one has the slightest doubt about that. They haven't lost a ship in the Red Sea so far, only because the Houthis don't have the necessary number of missiles and drones. But it's already proven beyond doubt, American planners know this, that in a confrontation with a great power, they will lose ships.
Em confronto com uma grande potência, eles vão perder navios. E outra também, tem problema sério, né? Além do gasto inútil aí.
And also, there's a serious problem besides the useless spending, which is that the American Navy is no longer prepared to face the realities of this new world. I think that for the Cold War era, or for the time when the Soviet Union ended, they could fulfill their missions. The United States was a power. It was a unipolar world. But now, you have two fantastic powers, which are Russia and China, two military powers. You have regional powers, like Iran and North Korea, which are a problem. So nowadays, effectively, I think the U.S. Navy is operating far beyond its capacity. And we've already seen, it was clear at the beginning of the Trump administration that he won't solve these problems.
No início do governo Trump aí que ele não vai sanar esses problemas. Hoje saiu vídeo na
Today, a video was released on Chinese CCTV, and Chinese planners are already doubting something I've always mentioned here on Norte de Guerra, that the Americans can revitalize their naval industry to be competitive with China. That's the next video I'm going to make. So folks, that was our video for today. I'll leave you with the intro for our strategic course, which will be taught by Adilson Pinto this Saturday, the 29th. It's an excellent course. And for those who want to support the channel, I always say, subscribe, share, comment. Anyone who can give a super sticker or super chat helps our growth. And there's the pics found here in the video description. We'll be back shortly, always with responsibility and commitment. See you in Brazil, folks. See you later.
Compromisso. Fé no Brasil, pessoal. Até mais. E na lista de desejos do canal Arte da Guerra, vocês encontram...
On the wish list of the Arte de Guerra channel, you will find a series of books, DVDs, booklets, documentaries, and clothing and decoration items with naval themes. Amazon accepts credit cards, bank slips, installments, and their delivery is quite fast. And whenever you buy books and other items on Amazon, you are helping the Arte de Guerra channel.
Ajudando o canal Arte da Guerra.
Music.